Hello there, and welcome to Midnight Geography. Tonight, we'll drift into the peaceful geography of the West Coast. The West Coast is where continents surrender to oceans, where ancient forces sculpt boundaries between solid earth and endless water. It's a margin of perpetual negotiation, cliffs carved by patient waves, beaches built one grain at a time, forests that drink fog, and mountains that catch clouds. Here, the planet breathes in tides and exhales mist. If you enjoy these peaceful geographical explorations, consider liking and subscribing. It helps other curious minds find their way here too. But for now, let's begin. The Lost Coast of California stretches for 80 miles along Humboldt and Mendocino counties, a place where the land refused to be tamed by human ambition. Here, the King Range rises 4,000 feet directly from the ocean, creating slopes so steep that even the determined engineers of Highway 1 had to admit defeat and turn inland. This is perhaps the only place along California's coast where the mountains won their argument with progress. The peaks emerge from the Pacific like ancient titans, their faces carved by salt wind and time. In the morning, fog pools in the valleys between ridges, creating an archipelago of mountain islands floating above a white sea. The steepness that kept the road away also preserved something precious, a coastline that looks much as it did centuries ago, where Roosevelt elk walk beaches that have never known the hum of traffic, where the only sounds are waves meeting cliffs in their eternal conversation. Just south of this wild coast, beneath the seafloor, lies one of Earth's most remarkable geological meetings. The Mendocino Triple Junction marks where three vast tectonic plates converge in a slow-motion collision that has been reshaping California for millions of years. The Pacific Plate, the North American Plate, and the small but significant Gorda Plate meet here in a submarine ballet of unimaginable force. Each year, this junction creeps northward at 2 inches, the same rate your fingernails grow, carrying the complicated geology of Northern California with it. This movement seems impossibly slow to human perception, yet it has built mountain ranges, opened valleys, and will eventually carry Los Angeles past San Francisco in about 20 million years. Scientists studying this junction have discovered that it creates a void in the Earth's mantle as it moves, causing upwelling that has lifted the coast ranges from the sea. What appears solid and permanent from the shore is actually a landscape in constant, patient motion. Point Reyes Peninsula presents one of geology's most elegant puzzles, a piece of land that doesn't quite belong where it sits. This peninsula rides on the Pacific Plate, while the rest of continental United States rests firmly on the North American Plate, making it a geographical stranger in its own country. The peninsula is traveling north at that familiar pace, fingernail growth, having journeyed from Southern California over the past 5 million years. The boundary between these two plates runs through Tamales Bay, a narrow finger of water that traces the San Andreas Fault with remarkable precision. Standing on Point Reyes, you're technically on the same tectonic plate as Japan, separated from the North American mainland by a rift that grows wider with each passing year. The lighthouse at Point Reyes has moved 30 feet north since it was built in 1870, though its keepers never felt a thing. Dairy farms on the peninsula graze cattle on pastures that once sat where Los Angeles is today. Their grass grown from soil that has traveled hundreds of miles on its slow journey north. 30 miles west of San Francisco's Golden Gate, the Farallon Islands rise from the Pacific like fragments of a lost world, and in a sense, they are. These craggy outposts sit atop underwater mountains that were once part of the Sierra Nevada range, torn away and transported out to sea by the inexorable movement of tectonic plates over 100 million years. Today, they form the visible peaks of an underwater mountain range that extends for miles beneath the surface. The islands are often wrapped in fog so thick that they seem to exist more in imagination than reality. On clear days, they appear on the horizon like ghost ships made of stone. The Spanish explorers called them Los Farallones, meaning the cliffs, though they might have better named them the mysteries. These islands host the largest seabird colony in the continental United States, where hundreds of thousands of birds nest on rocks that once stood where the Central Valley now lies. The surrounding waters plunge quickly to abyssal depths, creating upwelling currents that bring nutrients from the deep ocean to the surface. Monterey Canyon begins just offshore from Moss Landing, California, where it carves a chasm through the seafloor that rivals the Grand Canyon in its immensity. Plunging nearly 12,000 feet below sea level and extending 95 miles into the Pacific, this submarine canyon is a hidden wonder that most people pass by without knowing it exists. The canyon's head lies so close to shore that gray whales sometimes swim through water deeper than the Grand Canyon, just a stone's throw from surfers riding waves at Moss Landing State Beach. Scientists have discovered that the canyon acts as a massive nutrient pump, its steep walls funneling deep, cold, nutrient-rich water up toward the surface. This upwelling feeds an explosion of marine life, from microscopic plankton to blue whales, the largest animals ever to exist. The canyon was carved by an ancient river system when sea levels were much lower, though it continues to grow today through underwater avalanches that send millions of tons of sediment cascading into the deep. Research submarines exploring its depths have found walls decorated with colorful cold water corals and sponges that grow in the eternal darkness. The smallest incorporated city on the West Coast makes its home in the Sierra foothills, far from the ocean, yet still part of the coastal state's geography. Amador City covers just 0.3 of a square mile, a postage stamp of governance in California's gold country. The entire city could fit inside a typical suburban shopping mall with room to spare. Yet this tiny municipality, with its population that could fit in a movie theater, maintains all the formal structures of cities thousands of times its size: a mayor, a city council, municipal services. It's a reminder that human geography often defies logic, that communities persist not because of their size, but because of their stories. Meanwhile, Los Angeles sprawls across 503 square miles of coastal basin, a metropolis that could contain 1,600 Amador cities. This contrast illuminates something profound about the West Coast. It accommodates both the intimate and the immense, the village and the mega-city, each finding their place in the larger geographical story. Glass Beach in Fort Bragg tells a tale of transformation that only time and tides could write. For decades in the early 20th century, residents threw their garbage directly over the cliffs, bottles and auto glass tumbling into the coves below. The ocean, that great recycler, took this human carelessness and turned it into something unexpectedly beautiful. Over 30 years of constant wave action, the Pacific ground sharp shards into smooth gems, creating beaches that sparkle with millions of colored pebbles, emerald from beer bottles, sapphire from medicine vials, rare ruby from old taillights, clear diamonds from windows and plates. Each tide continues this patient work, rolling the glass pieces against each other with a sound like wind chimes. Walking these beaches at sunset, when the low light sets the glass ablaze, you witness one of geography's more forgiving lessons. That given enough time, nature can transform even our mistakes into something approaching wonder. Though collecting the glass is now prohibited to preserve this unique beach, each wave still deposits new treasures, smaller each year, as the ocean continues its persistent polishing. Near Point Arena, Bowling Ball Beach presents a geological riddle that took scientists decades to solve. At low tide, thousands of round sandstone spheres emerge from the sand, each one nearly perfectly spherical, arranged as if some giant had carefully placed them in rows. These formations, called concretions, formed millions of years ago when minerals cemented portions of seafloor sediment into harder spheres within softer mudstone. As the softer stone eroded away over millennia, these harder balls were gradually exposed, then shaped by waves into their current bowling ball perfection. The precision of their roundness seems almost supernatural. Some are so perfectly spherical that they appear machine-made. The beach reveals them only during minus tides, and even then only for a few hours before the Pacific reclaims them. Walking among these ancient spheres in the fog, with waves lapping at their bases, feels like discovering the playground of geological forces that worked with a patience we can barely comprehend. Each ball weighs several tons, yet the waves move them slightly with each storm, gradually rearranging nature's bowling alley. Tamales Bay traces a remarkable scar through Marin County, a 15-mile-long inlet that follows the San Andreas Fault with the precision of a surveyor's line. This narrow body of water, rarely more than a mile wide, fills a rift valley created where the Pacific and North American plates slide past each other. The bay is essentially a flooded fault line, a place where you can kayak along one of Earth's most significant geological boundaries. The water here has an unusual quality, often glassy calm, while the ocean outside rages with waves, protected by the surrounding hills that are themselves products of the fault's compression. On foggy mornings, the bay becomes a corridor of mystery, its far end disappearing into white silence. The eastern shore belongs to North America, the western shore to the Pacific Plate, and between them lies this ribbon of water that serves as both separator and connector. Scientists have found evidence of numerous earthquakes in the bay's sediments, layers of mud that tell stories of sudden violence followed by centuries of quiet accumulation. Rising from Morro Bay like a monument to volcanic fury frozen in stone, Morro Rock stands 576 feet tall, the last in a chain of ancient volcanic plugs called the Nine Sisters. These peaks march in an almost perfect line from San Luis Obispo to the sea, each one the crystallized throat of a volcano that died 23 million years ago. Morro Rock itself is the solidified magma chamber of its volcano, the softer outer cone long since eroded away by wind and rain, leaving only this resistant core. The Salinan people called it Lisamu and considered it a sacred site. When Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo sailed past in 1542, he named it El Morro, meaning the crown-shaped hill, though it looks more like a sleeping giant's fist emerging from the bay. Peregrine falcons nest in its upper reaches, their cries echoing off volcanic rock that cooled when the Pacific Ocean was hundreds of miles from here. The rock is now protected, connected to shore by a causeway that wasn't built by humans, but by the gradual accumulation of sand, making what was once an island into a peninsula tied forever to the mainland. The Channel Islands off Southern California hide a prehistoric secret beneath their modern appearance. During the last ice age, when global sea levels dropped by 400 feet, these 8 islands were joined as one massive island that scientists call Santa Rosae. This super island, nearly the size of Long Island, existed until about 11,000 years ago, when rising seas gradually separated it into the archipelago we see today. Pygmy mammoths once roamed Santa Rosa, evolving from full-sized mammoths that swam to the island and then shrank over generations, a process called island dwarfism. Archaeological evidence shows humans lived on Santa Rosa at least 13,000 years ago, making it one of the earliest confirmed human settlements in the Americas. As the Ice Age ended and seas rose, these ancient inhabitants watched their world literally break apart, hills becoming islands, valleys becoming channels. Today, the deepest parts of the channels between the islands mark where rivers once flowed across Santa Rosa's broad plains. Anacapa Island's arch rock frames the Pacific like a window carved by time itself, standing 40 feet tall in defiance of the waves that created it. This natural arch, carved through volcanic rock over 150,000 years, has become the symbol of Channel Islands National Park. The opening is large enough for boats to pass through on calm days, though few captains dare try. The arch represents a moment in geological time, temporary on the scale of millennia, yet seemingly permanent to human eyes. Eventually, perhaps in another 1,000 years, perhaps in 10,000, the arch will collapse, and Anacapa will have a different profile. But for now, it stands as a testament to the patient artistry of erosion. From certain angles, especially at sunset, the arch perfectly frames the distant Santa Barbara coastline, creating a natural picture frame that seems almost deliberately composed. California brown pelicans, once nearly extinct, now nest on the cliffs around the arch, their prehistoric silhouettes gliding through the opening like living fossils returning home. Where the Santa Lucia Mountains meet the Pacific at Big Sur, Bixby Creek Bridge spans 714 feet across a canyon that drops nearly 300 feet to the creek below. The bridge, one of the highest single-span concrete bridges in the world, seems to float between mountain walls that have been carved by Bixby Creek for 5 million years. Before the bridge's completion in 1932, this chasm was essentially impassable, forcing travelers to detour miles inland. The creek itself tells a deeper story. It has been cutting through these mountains since before they finished rising from the sea. In winter, storm runoff turns the usually gentle creek into a torrent that carries entire trees to the ocean. Standing on the bridge, you look down into a geological cross-section of time. Layers of rock exposed in the canyon walls that record millions of years of Earth's history. The bridge has become so iconic that many people forget it's merely a human addition to a landscape that was already magnificent, a thin ribbon of concrete stretched across a gulf that nature spent eons carving. McWay Falls performs a rare feat in geography. It falls directly onto a beach, one of only 2 waterfalls in California that cascade straight into the ocean. The waterfall drops 80 feet from the coastal bluffs of Julia Pfeiffer Burns State Park, fed by McWay Creek, which gathers its waters from the steep canyons of the Santa Lucia Mountains. For most of its history, the falls dropped directly into the ocean, but a landslide in 1983 created the small beach where the water now lands before reaching the waves. This beach, inaccessible to humans due to the sheer cliffs surrounding it, remains one of the most pristine spots on the California coast. The cove's turquoise waters seem to belong more to a tropical paradise than the often gray California coast, colored by the particular way sunlight filters through the clear water and reflects off the white sand bottom. In certain lights, especially during the golden hour before sunset, the mist from the falls creates rainbows that arc across the cove, adding an ethereal quality to an already dreamlike scene. At Point Reyes National Seashore, Alamir Falls offers its own version of this rare phenomenon, tumbling 40 feet over sandstone cliffs directly onto Wildcat Beach. Unlike McWay Falls' year-round flow, Alamir Falls swells and shrinks with the seasons, sometimes splitting into multiple cascades after heavy rains. The water comes from Alamir Creek, which flows through a rare coastal freshwater marsh before making its dramatic exit to the sea. This marsh acts as a natural filter, giving the fall's water an unusual clarity. The creek has carved a series of pools in the sandstone above the falls, each one perfectly circular as if shaped by an artist's hand. During especially high tides, waves crash against the base of the falls, creating moments when fresh and salt water meet in midair. The coastal Miwok people knew this place long before European maps gave it a Spanish name, calling it a place where the land weeps into the sea. To reach the falls requires a 13-mile round-trip hike, ensuring that even today it remains a place where solitude is part of the geography. The coast redwoods, those titans of the plant kingdom, grow in a narrow strip just 450 miles long from southern Oregon to central California, and nowhere else on Earth. This precise geographical restriction isn't arbitrary. These trees require a very specific set of conditions that exist only here. Summer fog provides 40% of their water needs, condensing on their needles and dripping to the forest floor in a constant, gentle rain, even during the dry season. The trees can absorb water directly through their bark and leaves, an adaptation that allows them to grow to heights that would otherwise be impossible, some reaching nearly 400 feet tall. These forests create their own weather, their canopy so dense that rain can be falling in the upper branches while the forest floor remains dry. The trees themselves are geographical features, their trunks wider than city buses, their crowns invisible from the ground, lost in their own manufactured mist. Some of these giants were already ancient when Rome fell, their heartwood containing a chemical that makes them nearly impervious to rot, fire, and insects. Fern Canyon in Prairie Creek. Redwood State Park creates a micro-world where the Jurassic period never quite ended. The canyon's 50-foot walls are completely covered with 5 species of ferns, creating vertical gardens that maintain 80% humidity year-round, regardless of the weather outside. Home Creek has carved this narrow gorge through sedimentary rock, creating walls so close together that in places you can touch both sides at once. The ferns here grow in impossible profusion: 5-finger ferns, lady ferns, chain ferns, sword ferns, and bracken ferns, their fronds creating a green tapestry that seems to breathe with every breeze. Steven Spielberg filmed scenes for Jurassic Park here, recognizing that this canyon already looked like a place where dinosaurs might appear around any corner. The constant moisture from the creek and the shade from the walls create conditions similar to those that existed when ferns dominated Earth's flora hundreds of millions of years ago. Walking through the canyon on a quiet morning, with only the sound of dripping water and the rustle of fronds, you experience a geography not just of place, but of time. The Oregon Dunes National Recreation Area encompasses 31,000 acres of sand dunes, some reaching 500 feet tall, the largest expanse of coastal sand dunes in North America. These mountains of sand were built grain by grain from sediment carried by the Umpqua River and other coastal streams over 7,000 years. The dunes are advancing inland at several feet per year, slowly swallowing forests in their path. Trees at the edge of this advance stand half-buried, their tops emerging from sand like the masts of ships sinking in a golden sea. The wind here is the architect, constantly reshaping the landscape, creating ridges and valleys that shift with each storm. In some places, The sand has buried entire forests, and when the wind occasionally exposes them, ghost forests of sand-blasted snags emerge like archaeological discoveries. Between the dunes lie unexpected wetlands where water tables intersect with low points, creating oases where completely different ecosystems thrive just yards from the barren sand. The sound in the dunes is remarkable, a deep quiet that seems to absorb noise, broken only by the distant ocean and the whisper of sand moving grain by grain. Haystack Rock at Cannon Beach, Oregon, stands 235 feet tall, a monolithic sea stack that serves as more than just a postcard icon. This intertidal island, accessible by foot at low tide, hosts Oregon's largest colony of tufted puffins, those improbable birds with beaks like tropical flowers on bodies dressed for Arctic waters. The puffins nest in burrows they drill into the soft sandstone each summer, their industrious excavations slowly helping to erode the very rock they call home. The rock itself formed underwater as sediment compressed into stone, then was lifted above sea level by tectonic forces, then isolated from shore by erosion, a biography written in rock that spans 15 million years. Tide pools around its base contain miniature worlds, where hermit crabs wage slow-motion battles for better shells, where sea stars move at speeds barely perceptible, where anemones wait with infinite patience for the tide to deliver their next meal. The rock changes color throughout the day, black in morning shadow, golden at sunset, sometimes wrapped entirely in fog until only its base remains visible, making it seem infinitely tall. The Devil's Punch Bowl near Otter Rock, Oregon, demonstrates what happens when the ocean finds a weakness in stone and exploits it for millennia. This collapsed sea cave creates a cauldron where incoming waves, especially during winter storms, churn themselves into foam with such violence that early settlers believed supernatural forces were at work. The bowl formed when the roof of a sea cave finally surrendered to gravity, leaving a rocky basin open to the sky but still connected to the ocean through underwater channels. At high tide during storms, water explodes through these channels, creating geysers that shoot 30 feet into the air. The churning action is hypnotic, water swirling in patterns that seem chaotic, yet follow the ancient physics of fluid dynamics. During calmer summer days, the bowl becomes a different place entirely, its bottom visible through clear water, revealing the smooth walls that waves have polished to the texture of glass. Local Coast Salish peoples knew this place as a dwelling of spirits, where the ocean speaks in tongues of foam and spray. The sound it makes during storms, a deep, rhythmic booming, can be heard a mile away, like the Earth's own heartbeat made audible. Cape Blanco in Oregon claims the title of the westernmost point in the contiguous United States, a windswept headland where the atmosphere seems to have declared war on anything attempting to stand upright. Winds here regularly exceed 100 miles per hour, with the highest recorded gust reaching 184 miles per hour, strong enough to sandblast paint from buildings, strong enough to reshape trees into living weather vanes that all point east. The Cape rises 245 feet above the ocean, its white cliffs giving it the name Blanco, though the Spanish explorers who named it might have been referring to the constant foam that streams from wave-struck rocks below. The lighthouse here, built in 1870, is the oldest continuously operating lighthouse in Oregon, its light visible 26 miles out to sea. Standing on Cape Blanco feels like standing at the edge of the world, where America runs out of west. The trees here grow horizontally, sculpted by wind into forms that seem to be fleeing inland. Even the grass grows differently, pressed flat against the earth, creating a landscape that looks permanently windswept because it is. In complete contrast to Cape Blanco's wild exposure, Depot Bay, Oregon, shelters the world's smallest navigable harbor. Just 6 acres of calm water protected from the Pacific's fury by a narrow rock channel. The entire harbor could fit inside a typical city park, yet it supports a fleet of fishing and whale-watching boats that somehow navigate the narrow entrance even in rough seas. The channel connecting the harbor to the ocean is so narrow that boats must enter one at a time, timing their passage between waves. During winter storms, waves crash against the seawall with such force that spray shoots through blowholes in the rock, creating fountains that can reach 60 feet high and shower the highway with seawater. The Siletz people called this place Depot, referring to the calm waters where they could safely land their canoes. The harbor's small size creates an intimate geography where every boat knows every other boat, where the harbor master can see the entire port from a single vantage point. It's a reminder that significance isn't always about size. This tiny harbor has provided safe refuge for over a century. The Nisquowan Ghost Forest in Oregon tells a story of catastrophe preserved in wood. 2,000 years ago, a massive earthquake dropped this coastal forest below sea level in minutes, killing the Sitka spruces instantly as saltwater flooded their roots. The trees died standing, and their stumps, preserved by the sand that buried them, emerge at extreme low tides like tombstones from another era. Carbon dating reveals they all died simultaneously, sometime between 1680 and 1720, victims of the last great Cascadia earthquake. These phantom forests appear at several places along the Oregon coast, each one a monument to the same moment of geological violence. The stumps at Nisquowan are particularly haunting. Over 100 of them scattered across the beach, their wood turned silver gray by centuries of salt preservation. Some still show the scars of the earthquake itself, trunks twisted and cracked by the force that dropped them. When fog rolls in during a minus tide, walking among these ancient sentinels feels like visiting a graveyard where the deceased refuse to fully disappear, their roots still gripping earth that betrayed them 2 millennia ago. Crater Lake, though sitting 100 miles inland in Oregon's Cascade Mountains, profoundly influences coastal weather in ways that seem almost magical. The lake, cradled in the caldera of Mount Mazama at 6,000 feet elevation, creates temperature inversions that pull marine air deep into the continent through the Rogue River Valley. This atmospheric river of ocean air travels inland each night, carrying fog and moisture from the Pacific to the lake's rim, where it condenses and falls as snow, up to 44 feet annually. The lake itself, nearly 2,000 feet deep and holding 5 trillion gallons of water, maintains a constant temperature that affects air pressure patterns for hundreds of miles. Its deep blue water, the color resulting from its incredible purity and depth, has no inlet or outlet streams, filled only by snow and rain, drained only by evaporation and seepage. This isolation has created one of the purest water bodies on Earth. The lake's influence on coastal weather was discovered when meteorologists noticed that fog patterns in the Rogue Valley precisely followed the temperature differential between the lake and the ocean. Where the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean, the Columbia River Bar has earned its grim nickname as the Graveyard of the Pacific, having claimed over 2,000 vessels since records began. Here, the 4th largest river in North America collides with ocean swells that have traveled thousands of miles across open water. The interaction creates standing waves up to 20 feet tall and currents that can exceed 12 knots. The bar shifts constantly. Sandbars that were navigable yesterday may be ship killers today. Winter storms make the crossing particularly treacherous, when river flow peaks just as Pacific storms drive massive swells eastward. Bar pilots who guide ships across earn their profession's highest wages, boarding vessels in conditions that would terrify most mariners. The Chinook people, who lived at the river's mouth for thousands of years, knew the bar's moods intimately, reading subtle signs in bird flight patterns and watercolor to predict safe crossing times. Even with modern technology, the bar claims vessels regularly. The Coast Guard station at Cape Disappointment conducts more rescues than any other in the United States. Their boats specially designed to self-right after being rolled by waves. Cape Disappointment in Washington seems appropriately named for mariners seeking clear skies, recording an average of 106 days of heavy fog annually, more than any other location in the continental United States. The Cape earned its melancholy name from explorer John Meares, who failed to find the Columbia River's entrance in 1788 due to fog and waves. The fog here isn't merely present, it's architectural, building walls of white that transform the landscape into something otherworldly. The lighthouse, built in 1856, often finds its light unable to penetrate more than a few hundred feet through fog so thick it muffles sound and makes breathing feel like inhaling clouds. This persistent fog creates a unique ecosystem where plants evolve to harvest water from the air, their leaves designed to channel condensation to their roots. Sitka spruces here grow differently than their relatives in clearer areas, their bark hosting gardens of moss and lichen that can weigh more than the tree's own foliage. On the rare clear days, the view extends to the ocean horizon, but locals say those days feel somehow wrong, like the Cape has forgotten its essential nature. The Hoh rainforest, just 30 miles from Washington's coast, receives 140 inches of rain annually, creating what acoustic ecologist Gordon Hempton has scientifically verified as the quietest place in the United States. The silence here isn't empty, but full, a quiet so complete it has texture, broken only by droplets falling from leaf to leaf in a percussion that somehow enhances rather than breaks the peace. This temperate rainforest exists because coastal mountains force Pacific moisture skyward, wringing rain from clouds that arrive heavy with ocean water. The trees here, Sitka spruce, western hemlock, Douglas fir, grow to enormous size, their trunks like columns in a vast green cathedral. Every surface is covered with life: moss, lichen, ferns, smaller plants growing on larger plants in layers of green that seem infinite. The forest floor is soft with centuries of fallen needles, muffling footsteps and creating the acoustic conditions that make this place so remarkably quiet. Scientists have measured noise levels here lower than those in soundproofed studios, a natural anechoic chamber where you can hear your own heartbeat. Ruby Beach in Olympic National Park earned its name from the garnet sand crystals that sparkle pink in sunlight, tiny gems eroded from metamorphic rocks in the Olympic Mountains. These garnets, harder than the surrounding minerals, concentrate on the beach as softer materials wash away, creating patches of sand that glitter like scattered rubies. The beach is guarded by sea stacks, tall islands of rock that stand like sentinels in the surf, each one topped with impossible gardens of spruce and hemlock that somehow find enough soil and rock crevices to survive. Driftwood here isn't mere debris, but architecture. Massive logs, some 12 feet in diameter, swept from inland forests during floods and deposited by storm tides in tangles that resemble the bones of wooden dragons. The garnets are most visible after storms, when wave action has sorted the sand by weight and hardness, creating ribbons of pink that wind between the more common gray and black sand. At sunset, When low light catches these crystals, the entire beach seems to glow with a warm pink fire that pulses with each wave. Rialto Beach's hole-in-the-wall presents a geological clock that only tells time at low tide. This natural arch, carved through 15-million-year-old marine sedimentary rock, becomes accessible for just 3 hours during each tidal cycle, creating a temporal geography where place and time are inseparable. The hole itself is large enough for people to walk through, its walls decorated with millions of small holes drilled by purple sea urchins over millennia. These industrious creatures bore into rock using their 5 teeth, creating perfectly round holes where they spend their entire lives, growing to fit their self-made prisons. The timing of access to the hole requires careful attention to tide tables. Arrive too early, and waves crash through with dangerous force. Too late, and the returning tide can trap visitors. The Quileute people, whose reservation borders the beach, have stories about this opening that predate written history, tales of it being a doorway between worlds that opens and closes with the breathing of the sea. Inside the hole at the moment of lowest tide, you can see centuries of tidal marks on the walls, horizontal lines that record the highest reaches of countless tides. The San Juan Islands of Washington transform with the tides in ways that challenge cartography itself. At high tide, the archipelago comprises 172 named islands, but as the tide drops, the number swells to over 400 as rocks and reefs emerge from the water. This mathematical impossibility of geography means that maps of the islands are only accurate for specific tidal heights. Some passages that boats navigate at high tide become walking paths at low tide. Entire bays empty and fill twice daily, revealing seafloors that become temporary meadows where eagles hunt for stranded fish. The islands sit in the rain shadow of the Olympic Mountains, receiving less than 30 inches of rain annually, while locations 50 miles west get 5 times that amount. This creates a Mediterranean-like climate in the Pacific Northwest, where madrone trees and prickly pear cactus grow within sight of glaciated peaks. The complex waterways between islands create some of the strongest tidal currents in North America, with massive volumes of water forced through narrow passages. Deception Pass, the most dramatic of these, creates whirlpools and standing waves that have swallowed boats whole. Deception Pass itself deserves particular attention, where twice daily, 2 billion cubic feet of water surge through a channel only 500 feet wide, creating currents that reach 8 knots, faster than most recreational boats can motor. The pass connects Skagit Bay to the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and the tidal difference between these bodies creates a reversing waterfall that changes direction 4 times each day. Captain George Vancouver named it Deception Pass in 1792, when he realized what he had thought was a peninsula was actually Whidbey Island. The bridge spanning the pass, built in 1935, sways visibly in strong winds, its steel structure humming a deep note that changes pitch with wind speed. Standing on the bridge during a tidal change, you can watch water pile up on one side of the pass, creating a height difference of several feet between the two sides. Whirlpools form and dissipate in seconds, some large enough to pull logs underwater. The native Samish and Swinomish peoples called this place the place of the turbulent water, navigating it in canoes with knowledge passed down through generations about exactly when and where safe passage could be found. Point Roberts, Washington, exists as a geographical anomaly, a 5-square-mile peninsula of America, accessible by land only through Canada. This curiosity was created in 1846 when negotiators agreed the border would follow the 49th parallel, not realizing this line would cut through the Tsawasan Peninsula, leaving its southern tip stranded as American territory. Residents must drive through Canada twice to reach the rest of Washington state, 25 miles and 2 international border crossings for a trip to the nearest American grocery store. Children here ride a school bus through a foreign country to attend middle and high school in Blaine, Washington. This isolation has created a unique community where everyone knows everyone, where the post office serves as social hub, where 5 bars serve a population of 1,300 because Canadians drive down for cheaper drinks. The peninsula is surrounded on 3 sides by the Strait of Georgia's cold waters, creating a microclimate where frost rarely forms, despite the northern latitude. During Prohibition, Point Roberts was a major smuggling hub, its isolation and international border making it perfect for running Canadian whiskey to the States. The Salish Sea encompasses all the marine waters between Vancouver Island and the mainland, including Puget Sound, the Strait of Georgia, and the Strait of Juan de Fuca, a body of water larger than the state of Connecticut, with a surface area of 6,700 square miles. The name, officially adopted in 2009, honors the Coast Salish peoples who have lived along these waters for thousands of years. The sea contains 419 islands, countless smaller rocks and reefs, and enough shoreline that if stretched straight would reach from Seattle to Miami. Despite appearing as one body of water, the Salish Sea is actually a complex system of deep basins separated by shallow sills, each with distinct water properties. The deepest point, near Point Jefferson, plunges 930 feet below the surface, deeper than most of the continental shelf off the west coast. This depth was carved by glaciers 3,000 feet thick during the last ice age, their weight actually depressing the Earth's crust, which is still slowly rebounding at about 1 inch per decade. Puget Sound itself reaches depths of 930 feet near Point Jefferson, carved by the Puget Lobe of the Cordilleran ice sheet that was 3,000 feet thick 15,000 years ago. The weight of this ice was so immense it pressed the Earth's crust down hundreds of feet, and the land is still rising as it rebounds from this burden, lifting shorelines about 1 inch every decade. This glacial carving created a sound with multiple deep basins separated by shallow sills, each basin with its own circulation pattern and water characteristics. The deepest waters in the sound are actually older than the surface waters by several years, having entered through the Strait of Juan de Fuca and sunk due to their higher salinity, then slowly circulated through the deep basins. In these depths, the water maintains a constant temperature of 45 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, creating refuges for deep water species normally found in the open ocean. Giant Pacific octopuses thrive in these deep waters, growing to spans of 20 feet in the darkness where sunlight never reaches. The Juan de Fuca Plate, one of the smallest tectonic plates on Earth, slides beneath the North American plate just off the Washington coast at 1.6 inches per year, descending into the Earth in a process called subduction. This plate, only about 250 miles across, is the last remnant of the once vast Farallon Plate that underlaid much of the Pacific Ocean. As it descends, it generates the volcanic activity that created Mount Rainier, Mount Baker, and the other Cascade volcanoes. The friction of its descent also builds stress that releases in massive earthquakes every 300 to 500 years. The last great Cascadia earthquake in 1700 was so powerful it created a tsunami that struck Japan 9 hours later, recorded in Japanese historical documents as the Orphan Tsunami because it arrived without an earthquake. Scientists have found evidence of 41 of these megaquakes in the last 10,000 years, written in layers of tsunami-deposited sand found miles inland. The plate descends at an angle of about 11 degrees, melting as it goes deeper, its minerals becoming the magma that feeds the Cascade volcanoes. La Push, Washington, sits at the westernmost point of the contiguous United States, accessible by road, where the Quileute River meets the Pacific after flowing just 6 miles from its source, the shortest river in the United States by some measures. Despite its brief journey, the river carries massive volumes of water from the rain-soaked Olympics, sometimes flowing at 20,000 cubic feet per second during winter floods. The name La Push comes from the French la bouche, meaning the mouth, referring to the river's outlet. The Quileute people have lived at this river mouth for thousands of years, their entire traditional territory encompassing just 1 square mile, the smallest tribal land base in the United States. According to their stories, they were created here, transformed from wolves by a traveling transformer figure. The river mouth creates unique conditions where fresh and salt water mix in patterns that change hourly with the tides, supporting runs of salmon that have adapted to this specific river's chemistry, able to find their way home from thousands of miles at sea by detecting molecular traces of their birth water. The Quinault Valley on the Olympic Peninsula contains the world's largest Sitka spruce by volume, a giant holding nearly 12,000 cubic feet of wood, nourished by soil enriched by 8,000 years of salmon runs. The tree stands 191 feet tall with a circumference of 58 feet, requiring 20 people holding hands to encircle it. This single tree contains enough wood to build several houses, yet it continues growing, adding a ton of new wood each year. The valley it grows in receives over 12 feet of rain annually, creating conditions where trees grow faster than almost anywhere else on Earth. The salmon that die here after spawning contribute marine-derived nitrogen to the soil, fertilizer from the sea that scientists can trace in the wood of trees hundreds of feet tall. Bears and wolves drag salmon carcasses into the forest, distributing ocean nutrients throughout the valley. The Quinault people have a saying that the trees and salmon are relatives, each one needing the other to survive. Research has proven this wisdom correct. Trees along salmon streams grow up to 3 times faster than those along streams without salmon runs. Vancouver Island, the largest island on the west coast of the Americas, encompasses 12,000 square miles separated from the mainland by the Strait of Georgia, which formed just 10,000 years ago, when Ice Age glaciers melted. The island is actually the exposed portion of an ancient mountain range, the Insular Mountains, most of which now lie beneath the sea. The island contains the wettest place in North America, Henderson Lake, which receives over 260 inches of rain annually. This rain feeds rivers that have carved deep valleys, including the Alberni Inlet, which cuts 30 miles into the island's heart, creating a fjord so long that tides at its head occur 2 hours later than at its mouth. The island's west coast faces the open Pacific, with no land between it and Japan, receiving storm waves that have traveled thousands of miles. These waves have carved a coastline of incredible complexity: sea caves, arches, blowholes, and surge channels that concentrate wave energy into explosive fountains. The island is slowly rotating clockwise, its northern end moving west while its southern end moves east, a movement so slow it can only be detected by GPS measurements over decades. Glacier Bay in Alaska tells a story of retreat written in ice and stone. Just 250 years ago, this entire bay was buried beneath a single massive glacier over 4,000 feet thick. Today, that ice has retreated 65 miles, the fastest documented glacial retreat in the world, revealing a landscape so new that soil hasn't yet formed in many places. The bay itself didn't exist when George Vancouver sailed past in 1794. He saw only a wall of ice. Now it's a 60-mile-long fjord system with arms that branch like the roots of a great tree. As the ice retreated, the land began rising, freed from the glacier's immense weight, lifting at nearly 2 inches per year, the fastest glacial rebound on Earth. Plants colonized the newly exposed rock in a precise sequence that scientists call primary succession. First lichens and moss, then fireweed and willows, finally spruce and hemlock. Watching Glacier Bay is like watching the Earth recreate itself, starting from bare rock and building toward forest. Harbor seals give birth on icebergs calved from tidewater glaciers, their pups spending their first weeks of life on floating nurseries that melt a little more each day. The Mendenhall Glacier near Juneau harbors ice caves that glow with an ethereal blue light, created when centuries of compression squeeze all air bubbles from the ice, leaving crystals so pure they filter out every color except blue. These caves form where meltwater carves tunnels through the glacier, creating temporary cathedrals that exist for just a season or two before collapsing and reforming elsewhere. Walking inside one is like entering a frozen wave. The walls ripple with flow patterns frozen in time, recording the glacier's movement from decades past. The blue light has an almost supernatural quality, as if the ice itself is luminescent. The glacier has retreated 2 miles since 1958, revealing land that hasn't seen sunlight for 3,000 years. In this newly exposed terrain, scientists have found ancient forests crushed flat, their wood still fresh enough to burn. The glacier makes sounds as it moves, creaking, groaning, occasionally cracking with reports like thunder as crevasses form. Native Tlingit stories tell of the glacier as a living being that advances and retreats according to its own desires, sometimes angry, sometimes peaceful, always powerful beyond human comprehension. Kodiak Island, Alaska's Emerald Isle, spans 3,595 square miles, making it the second largest island in the United States, formed by the slow collision of ocean floor fragments called terranes over 200 million years. The island is essentially a collection of different pieces of Earth's crust that traveled thousands of miles before being welded together by tectonic forces. Some rocks on Kodiak originated near the equator, carrying fossils of tropical sea creatures to this subarctic location. The island hosts the largest bears on Earth, Kodiak brown bears that can weigh 1,500 pounds, evolved in isolation to grow larger than their mainland cousins. The island's complex geology creates diverse habitats from alpine tundra to temperate rainforest, all within a day's walk. Deep fjords cut into the island's heart, some reaching 40 miles inland, where mountains rise directly from the sea to 4,000 feet. These fjords are drowned valleys, carved by glaciers then flooded when ice melted. In the island's interior, lakes appear and disappear as glaciers dam and release water, creating a landscape that changes not just over geological time, but within human memory. The Aleutian Islands arc 1,200 miles from Alaska toward Russia, forming a dotted line that marks the northern boundary of the Pacific Ring of Fire, with 57 volcanoes rising from the sea. This chain represents one of the most geologically active places on Earth, where the Pacific Plate dives beneath the North American Plate, generating constant earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The islands are actually the peaks of submarine volcanoes, with most of their mass hidden beneath the waves. Some islands are still growing, New lava adds acres of land during eruptions, while others are shrinking as waves erode volcanic ash faster than eruptions can replace it. The islands create a barrier between the Bering Sea and the Pacific Ocean, forcing ocean currents through narrow passes where tidal races can exceed 15 knots. Weather here is born from the collision of Arctic and Pacific air masses, creating storms of legendary violence. The Aleut people navigated these treacherous waters in kayaks made from driftwood and sea lion skin, reading currents and wave patterns with knowledge accumulated over thousands of years. Their name for the chain translates to the land that is not broken, seeing connection where others see separation. Attu Island, the westernmost point of the Aleutians, sits at 173 degrees east longitude. So far west, it's actually in the eastern hemisphere. This geographic paradox means Attu is closer to Tokyo than to Anchorage, nearer to Russia than to the Alaska mainland. The international dateline takes a peculiar jog to keep Attu on the same calendar day as the rest of Alaska, though by strict longitude it should be a day ahead. The island experiences weather that seems designed to test the limits of human endurance. 100-mile-per-hour winds are common, fog persists for weeks, and the Japanese current brings relatively warm water that creates constant storms when it meets Arctic air. During World War II, Attu was the only part of the United States occupied by foreign forces since the War of 1812, when Japanese troops held it for nearly a year. The island's grasses grow horizontally, permanently bent by ceaseless wind. No trees exist here. The wind prevents anything from growing taller than a few feet. Archaeological evidence shows humans have lived on Attu for at least 2,500 years, adapting to one of Earth's most challenging environments. The California Current flows southward along the entire west coast at approximately 1 mile per hour, a river in the ocean carrying cold water from Alaska that profoundly shapes the climate from British Columbia to Baja California. This current is why San Francisco remains 20 degrees cooler in summer than Norfolk, Virginia, despite sharing the same latitude. The current is actually the eastern edge of the North Pacific Gyre, a circulation pattern the size of a continent that rotates clockwise, taking water on a journey of decades around the Pacific Basin. Water in the California Current last touched atmosphere near Japan 50 years ago, carrying with it chemical signatures of mid-20th century industrial emissions. The current creates coastal upwelling when winds push surface water offshore, allowing deep, nutrient-rich water to rise. This upwelling supports one of the most productive marine ecosystems on Earth, feeding everything from microscopic plankton to blue whales. The current also carries organisms thousands of miles from their origins. Tropical fish larvae from Mexico sometimes reach Oregon, while Alaskan species drift to Southern California. During El Niño events, the current weakens or reverses, causing dramatic ecological changes that demonstrate how this invisible river of cold water maintains the West Coast's entire marine ecosystem. Point Arena Lighthouse marks the precise location where the cold California current meets warmer waters from the south, creating an oceanic frontal system as distinct as any weather front in the atmosphere. This collision of water masses generates upwelling so intense that nutrients from 600 feet deep rise to the surface, supporting commercial fisheries that account for 25% of the United States' total catch. The lighthouse itself stands 115 feet tall, the tallest lighthouse on the Pacific coast, necessary because Point Arena projects so far into the Pacific that ships must navigate around it. Built after the 1906 earthquake destroyed the original, the current lighthouse was the first steel-reinforced concrete lighthouse in America, designed to withstand the frequent earthquakes along this section of the San Andreas Fault. From the lighthouse gallery, Observers can often see the boundary between water masses, a visible line in the ocean where green, productive water meets the deeper blue of less fertile seas. Gray whales navigate along this boundary during migration, using the temperature differential as a highway marker on their journey between Alaska and Mexico. The Humboldt Current surfaces near Cape Mendocino, bringing water from 650 feet deep that last saw sunlight half a century ago near Japan. This upwelling is so powerful, it can drop ocean temperature by 15 degrees in a matter of hours, creating fog banks that roll inland like slow avalanches of cloud. The surfacing water is ancient by biological standards, predating most of the plankton that will feed in it. This deep water carries chemical signatures from across the Pacific, volcanic minerals from underwater eruptions, organic compounds from whale falls thousands of miles away, even microscopic particles of Asian dust that settled on the ocean decades ago. The current creates a marine climate onshore, where temperature varies less than 10 degrees between winter and summer. Redwood trees depend on this climatic stability, their shallow roots absorbing moisture from fog generated by the cold current meeting warm air. The indigenous Wyandotte people called this place where the current surfaces the beginning of water, recognizing it as the source of the abundance that supported their civilization for thousands of years. Scientists studying the current have found it carries larvae of deep sea creatures to the surface, where most die in the bright, shallow water, their bodies feeding the explosion of life in the upwelling zone. Año Nuevo State Park hosts an extraordinary gathering each winter when 10,000 elephant seals converge on beaches that were 6 miles inland during the Pliocene epoch, when sea levels were 300 feet higher than today. These massive pinnipeds, males can weigh 5,000 pounds, transform quiet beaches into arenas of thunderous combat and birth. The seal's presence here is a recent phenomenon in geological terms. They were nearly extinct by 1892, reduced to fewer than 100 individuals, but have recovered to over 200,000. The beaches they occupy are actually ancient sea terraces, carved by waves when the ocean stood at different levels over millions of years. Each terrace represents a period of stable sea level, creating a staircase of former beaches rising into the coastal hills. During breeding season, the beaches become a democracy of noise, males bellowing challenges, females calling to pups, young seals practicing their calls. The sound carries for miles inland, a cacophony that would seem threatening if you didn't know it was simply the sound of life continuing. Between breeding seasons, the beaches return to silence, marked only by wallows in the sand and paths through the dunes carved by countless seal bodies. The Fitzgerald Marine Reserve near Half Moon Bay compresses extraordinary biological diversity into just 3 acres of tide pools, containing over 200 species of marine animals and 130 species of marine plants. This biodiversity rivals tropical coral reefs existing in the cold waters of Northern California. The reserve's tide pools are carved into a shelf of sedimentary rock called the Purissima Formation, laid down 4 to 7 million years ago when this area was deep sea floor. The pools are arranged in terraces that correspond to different tidal heights, each level hosting distinct communities of organisms adapted to specific periods of exposure and submersion. The highest pools might be submerged only during the highest tides of the year, supporting creatures that can survive weeks out of water. The lowest pools are exposed only during the lowest tides, harboring animals that would quickly die if removed from constant moisture. Between these extremes exists a gradient of life, each species occupying its precise niche. Scientists have documented evolutionary changes in some species here over just decades, adapting to rising temperatures and changing ocean chemistry in real time. Point Lobos State Reserve earned landscape artist Francis McComas's declaration as the greatest meeting of land and water in the world, where 300-million-year-old granite meets 15-million-year-old sandstone in a geological conversation between different eras of Earth's history. The granite, formed deep underground when dinosaurs walked the Earth, tells of massive volcanic activity that built the Sierra Nevada. The younger sandstone speaks of seas that covered this area relatively recently in geological terms. Where these two rock types meet, differential erosion has created a landscape of extraordinary complexity. Hidden coves, sea caves, and carved channels where waves explode into spray during storms. The reserve's name comes from the sea lions that haul out on offshore rocks, their Spanish name Lobos marinos, meaning sea wolves. The cypress trees here grow nowhere else on Earth naturally, clinging to cliffs in poses that seem to defy both gravity and logic, their roots finding purchase in cracks barely wide enough for water to enter. Some of these trees are over 2,000 years old, their growth rings recording wet years and droughts, warm periods and cold, a climate diary written in wood. Pfeiffer Beach in Big Sur presents a geological puzzle in purple, where manganese garnet particles eroded from the surrounding hills create patches of purple sand found in only a few places on Earth. The garnets come from rocks deep in the Santa Lucia Mountains, carried to the beach by Sycamore Creek after being freed from their parent rock by millions of years of weathering. These purple crystals are harder than quartz, surviving the journey from mountain to sea, while softer minerals are ground to dust. After winter storms, the purple sand concentrates in patterns that change daily with wind and waves, creating temporary artworks that might last hours or weeks. The beach also features Keyhole Rock, a dramatic sea arch where sunset light passes through the opening for a few minutes each evening during certain times of year, creating a natural spotlight that illuminates the purple sand in otherworldly hues. The Esselen people, who lived in these mountains for thousands of years, considered the purple sand sacred, believing it was stained by the blood of a mythical serpent that lived in the offshore rocks. The Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary protects 6,094 square miles of ocean, an area larger than the state of Connecticut, extending from Marin County to Cambria. This sanctuary exists because of the Monterey Canyon, whose deep waters create upwelling that supports extraordinary biodiversity. The sanctuary boundaries follow the canyon's contours, protecting not just surface waters but depths reaching 2 miles below sea level. Within these boundaries, 36 species of marine mammals regularly appear, from tiny harbor porpoises to blue whales longer than basketball courts. The sanctuary contains one of the most productive kelp forests on Earth, underwater cathedrals where giant kelp grows 2 feet per day, creating structures as complex as terrestrial rainforests. These forests host over 800 species of marine life, from microscopic bryozoans to giant Pacific octopuses. The sanctuary's waters also preserve human history. Over 400 shipwrecks rest on its seafloor, some dating to Spanish colonial times. During World War II, Japanese submarines patrolled these waters, and one still lies on the bottom, slowly becoming an artificial reef colonized by deep-sea corals. Elkhorn Slough, near Monterey Bay, is California's second-largest estuary, where 7 feet of tidal change twice daily moves 6 million cubic meters of water through channels carved by the ancient Salinas River. This movement creates a pumping action that makes the slough one of the most nutrient-rich bodies of water on the Pacific coast. The slough is actually a drowned river valley, formed when sea levels rose after the last ice age. flooding what was once a terrestrial canyon. Today, it provides critical habitat for over 340 bird species, including several that exist nowhere else in the world. Sea otters here have learned to use tools, smashing shellfish on rocks balanced on their chests, a behavior passed from mother to pup through generations. The slough's mud flats, exposed at low tide, might appear barren, but contain billions of organisms, worms, clams, crustaceans that support the entire food web. These mudflats also serve as horizontal forests of microscopic algae that produce as much oxygen per acre as rainforest. The constant tidal flushing prevents the buildup of pollutants, making the slough a self-cleaning system that has remained healthy despite being surrounded by agricultural land. Mavericks, near Half Moon Bay, generate some of the largest surfable waves on Earth when deep water swells encounter an underwater ramp of rock that rises from 50 feet to 15 feet deep in just 20 yards. This abrupt shallowing focuses wave energy, like a lens focuses light, creating waves that can reach 60 feet in height. The break only works under specific conditions: northwest swells with periods over 15 seconds, generated by storms thousands of miles away in the Aleutian Islands. These conditions occur perhaps 10 times per winter, making each maverick swell an event that draws observers from around the world. The waves break half a mile offshore, over water still deep enough that falling surfers can be driven far underwater by the force of the breaking wave. The underwater topography that creates these monster waves was unknown until the 1990s, when surfers using fish finders discovered the precise bathymetry responsible for the break. The spot was named after a dog who would swim out with his owner, but was too smart to follow into the massive waves. The Golden Gate Strait, that iconic entrance to San Francisco Bay, reaches 400 feet deep at its center, carved not by the ocean, but by the ancestral Sacramento River, when sea level was lower and the bay was a valley. This ancient river, combining the flow of California's entire Central Valley watershed, cut through the coastal mountains here during repeated ice ages when the Pacific was hundreds of feet lower. Today, twice daily, the tide forces 400 billion gallons of water through this 1 mile wide opening, creating currents that exceed 6 knots. The depth and currents make the strait incredibly dangerous. Over 300 ships have wrecked attempting to navigate it. The water in the strait is stratified, with distinct layers of different temperatures and salinities sliding past each other like sheets of liquid glass. During ebb tides, fresh water from the Sacramento River rides over denser salt water heading out to sea, while during flood tides, cold ocean water dives beneath warmer bay water flowing in. This creates complex circulation patterns that weren't fully understood until scientists used submarine robots to map the currents in 3 dimensions. Angel Island in San Francisco Bay is composed of 13 different rock formations ranging from 15 million to 200 million years old, making it a geological museum where you can walk through time. The oldest rocks are serpentine, formed in the Earth's mantle and pushed to the surface by tectonic forces. Younger sandstones tell of ancient seas, while volcanic rocks speak of eruptions that occurred when the Pacific Ocean was hundreds of miles away. The island's summit provides views of geological processes still active today: the San Andreas Fault to the west, the Hayward Fault to the east, both visible as linear valleys marking where the Earth is tearing itself apart. The island has been many things through human history: Miwok fishing camp, military fort, immigration station, prisoner of war camp. But geologically, it remains what it has always been: a collection of rocks from different places and times, assembled here by chance and forces beyond human comprehension. During extreme low tides, you can see wave-cut platforms around the island's base, carved when sea level was higher, reminders that even the seemingly permanent boundary between land and sea is temporary. Alcatraz Island was created from sandstone that hardened underwater 135 million years ago during the Cretaceous period, when dinosaurs ruled the Earth, and this location was deep sea floor far from any coast. The sandstone formed from sediments eroded from mountains that no longer exist, carried by rivers that vanished millions of years ago. Tectonic forces eventually pushed this ancient seafloor above the waves, creating an island so solid it provided the perfect foundation for the fortress and prison that would make it famous. The rock is so hard that prisoners attempting to dig escape tunnels with spoons would have needed centuries to succeed. The island's position in the bay creates unique conditions. It's often warmer than San Francisco in summer and cooler in winter. Wrapped in its own microclimate, gardens planted by prisoners still bloom, including roses brought by the first military families in the 1860s, their roots finding sustenance in pockets of soil accumulated in cracks in the ancient sandstone. During nesting season, the island hosts thousands of seabirds who seem unbothered by its dark human history, concerned only with the excellent fishing in the surrounding waters. The Richmond shoreline in San Francisco Bay covers 32 miles of what was once the bay's most extensive tidal marshland, where 90% of the original wetlands have been filled since 1850. These lost marshes once filtered the entire watershed's runoff, cleaning water before it reached the bay. Maps from the 1800s show a shoreline unrecognizable today. Vast marshes stretching miles inland, threaded with channels that native Ohlone people navigated in tool boats. The fill used to create land for development came from many sources: gold rush mining debris, rubble from the 1906 earthquake, even entire abandoned ships from the gold rush era, now entombed beneath parking lots and buildings. In some places, the fill is over 50 feet thick, creating artificial land that liquefies during earthquakes. Recent restoration efforts have begun to reverse this transformation, breaking levees to let the tide return to former marshlands. Within years of restoration, these areas explode with life. Birds return, fish spawn in newly flooded channels. Native plants emerge from seeds that remained viable in the soil for over a century. Bodega Head is a granite promontory that has traveled 350 miles north from Southern California, riding on the Pacific Plate along the San Andreas Fault over 20 million years. This headland is literally a piece of Southern California that has migrated north, carrying a different geology than the surrounding landscape. The granite here matches rocks found in the Tehachapi Mountains near Los Angeles, proof of its southern origin. The headland's journey continues at 2 inches per year, meaning it will be in Oregon in another 15 million years. During its travel, the granite has been sculpted by waves into dramatic cliffs and hidden coves. The infamous hole in the head is a partially excavated foundation for a nuclear power plant, abandoned in the 1960s when geologists discovered the San Andreas Fault runs directly through the site. Today, the hole has filled with water, creating an artificial pond that perfectly illustrates the folly of ignoring geological reality. Harbor seals pup in the protected coves, their young born on beaches made of decomposed granite from mountains that stood hundreds of miles south millions of years ago. Salt Point State Park features tuffoni formations that seem more like alien architecture than earthly geology, honeycomb patterns in sandstone created by salt crystallization over millennia. These formations develop when salty mist from the ocean penetrates porous sandstone, then evaporates, leaving salt crystals that slowly pry apart the rock's structure. Each inch of depth in these honeycomb chambers takes approximately 1,000 years to form, making even small tuffoni older than most human civilizations. The patterns follow no blueprint yet achieve remarkable regularity, as if designed by an intelligence that thinks in geological time. Some formations create natural amphitheaters where sound behaves strangely, whispers carrying farther than shouts. The Kashaya Pomo people who lived here for thousands of years considered these formations sacred, believing them to be the work of spirits who carved messages in stone. Walking among the tuffoni at sunset, when low light fills each cavity with shadow, creates an otherworldly landscape where rock appears to breathe. The salt that creates these formations comes from spray lifted by waves striking rocks below, each droplet carrying a few molecules of salt that, given enough time, can hollow out solid stone. The Russian River changes course dramatically at Jenner, California, where tectonic uplift forced it to turn 90 degrees and parallel the coast for 2 miles before finding an outlet to the sea. This remarkable detour exists because the land is rising faster than the river can cut through it, forcing the water to flow sideways along the beach behind a narrow barrier of sand. During winter storms, waves sometimes close the river mouth entirely, causing water to back up and flood the valley until pressure builds enough to burst through the sand. The river's unusual path creates a rare ecosystem where fresh and salt water mingle in patterns that change hourly with tides and daily with rainfall. Harbor seals give birth in the river's warm, protected waters, their pups learning to swim where river current meets ocean surge. The sandbar at the river mouth shifts constantly, sometimes closing completely, other times opening wide enough for salmon to surge upstream. From above, the river's path looks impossible, as if water is flowing uphill along the beach, defying the basic logic of gravity. This geographic anomaly creates some of California's most productive steelhead fishing, as fish gather at the mouth waiting for the right conditions to run upstream. Patrick's Point in Humboldt County contains some of the oldest rocks on the California coast, 400-million-year-old remnants of ancient ocean floor that have survived the recycling of several supercontinents. These rocks, called the Dothan Formation, originated near the equator and have traveled thousands of miles to reach their current position. Within these ancient stones are pillow basalts, formed when lava erupted underwater, creating bulbous shapes that look like giant stone pillows stacked upon each other. The point rises 200 feet above the ocean, offering views of sea stacks that are younger additions to the landscape, mere tens of millions of years old. Wedding Rock, connected to the mainland by a narrow trail, has been a ceremonial site for the Yurok people for countless generations. They knew these rocks contained power, though they couldn't have known they were standing on pieces of Earth's history that predate complex life on land. The vegetation here grows differently than anywhere else nearby, influenced by the unique chemistry of these ancient volcanic rocks. Fog often wraps the point, while sunshine brightens areas just inland, as if the old rocks attract clouds, holding on to moisture like memories. The Smith River is the only major undammed river in California, flowing wild for its entire length from the Klamath Mountains to the Pacific near Crescent City. This freedom allows the river to behave as rivers did before humans began controlling water, flooding in winter, running low in summer, constantly rearranging its channel with each major storm. The river's watershed is underlain by serpentine rock that creates naturally low nutrient levels, keeping the water extraordinarily clear. Even during winter floods, the Smith runs cleaner than most rivers do at low flow. This clarity allows sunlight to penetrate deep, supporting unusual aquatic plants that exist nowhere else. The river's freedom to flood has preserved vast groves of old-growth redwoods along its banks, trees that have evolved to withstand periodic inundation. Some of these giants have flood scars 30 feet up their trunks, marking extreme events from centuries past. The Smith's Salmon and Steelhead runs remain robust, while other rivers have seen dramatic declines, proof that rivers know better than engineers how to manage themselves. During summer, the river becomes a series of emerald pools connected by silver riffles, each pool holding fish that have never known the barrier of a dam. Battery Point Lighthouse in Crescent City becomes an island at high tide, accessible only during a 4-hour window when low tide exposes a natural causeway of rock. This temporal isolation means the lighthouse keepers lived by the rhythm of tides rather than clocks, their connection to the mainland controlled by the moon's pull on the ocean. Built in 1856, the lighthouse sits on a small rocky island that's actually the remains of an ancient sea stack, connected to shore by a wave-cut platform exposed only at low tide. The lighthouse has survived multiple tsunamis, including the 1964 wave that destroyed much of Crescent City, but left the lighthouse standing, water flowing around it like a river around a boulder. During storms, waves crash completely over the island, spray reaching the lighthouse lens 70 feet above sea level. The keepers who lived here reported that the house would shake during major storms, dishes rattling in cupboards as waves compressed air in sea caves beneath the foundation. Today, visitors must time their arrival and departure precisely or risk being stranded until the next low tide, making every visit an exercise in reading natural rhythms that modern life usually lets us ignore. The Chetco River in Oregon harbors the northernmost naturally occurring coast redwoods, growing in a 7-mile strip where the river canyon creates perfect microclimatic conditions. These trees exist here because the canyon channels warm air from the interior, while coastal fog provides moisture, recreating conditions found hundreds of miles south. The redwoods here are genetically distinct from their California relatives, having evolved in isolation for thousands of years. They're slightly smaller, more cold-tolerant, adapted to Oregon's harsher winters. The Chetco redwoods survived the ice ages in this refugium when redwoods disappeared from most of their range. Some trees here are over 2,000 years old, their rings recording climate changes that shifted redwood range north and south over millennia. The river itself is remarkable for its clarity, flowing over ancient seafloor rocks called ophiolites that contribute few sediments. The water is so clear that salmon can be watched from bridges as they swim upstream. During winter floods, these redwoods stand in rushing water that would topple lesser trees. Their massive buttressed bases evolved specifically to withstand the Chetco's periodic violence. Gold Beach, Oregon, sits where black sand magnetite deposits can still be separated with magnets, remnants of gold rush mining operations that processed 2 million yards of beach sand. The black sand is actually tiny particles of iron-rich minerals eroded from the Klamath Mountains, concentrated by waves that sort particles by weight. During the gold rush, miners discovered that gold, being even heavier than magnetite, concentrated in the same deposits. They built elaborate sluice systems on the beach, diverting streams across the sand to wash away lighter minerals. Today, after winter storms, patches of black sand appear like shadows on the beach, sometimes covering entire coves. A strong magnet dragged through this sand will emerge covered in iron particles, looking like a metallic sea urchin. The concentration process that creates these deposits is the same one that operates on beaches worldwide, but here it's visible in dramatic black streaks that pattern the beach differently after each storm. The Rogue River, entering the ocean here, continues to bring new gold and magnetite from the mountains, ensuring that Gold Beach lives up to its name, though the quantities are far too small for profitable mining. The Rogue River carved its canyon to the sea before the Klamath Mountains finished rising, making the river older than the mountains it flows through. This is called an antecedent river, one that maintained its course while the land rose beneath it, cutting down as fast as the mountains grew up. The evidence is in the canyon walls, where horizontal sedimentary layers have been tilted nearly vertical by the rising mountains, yet the river cuts straight through them. The Rogue has been flowing to the Pacific for at least 50 million years, long enough to have witnessed the Coast Range emerge from the sea. In some places, the river has cut so deep that it flows through gorges where sunlight only reaches the water for a few hours each day. These shadowed reaches stay cool even in summer, providing refuge for salmon when the rest of the river warms. The indigenous Takelma people called it the river that flows from the sunset to the sunrise, recognizing its unusual east-to-west course. The river's age gives it priority over the mountains. It was here first, and the mountains had to accommodate its presence as they rose. Bandon Beach's sea stacks are composed of Jurassic and Cretaceous sediments that are 150 million years old, tilted vertically by tectonic forces to create dramatic spires rising from the sand. These rocks formed as mud and sand on an ancient seafloor when this location was far out in the Pacific. The vertical tilting occurred as the rocks were scraped onto the continent by subduction, standing beds on end that originally lay flat. Now waves erode them along their bedding planes, creating narrow fins and pillars that look deliberately sculpted. Some stacks have resistant caps that protect softer rock below, creating mushroom shapes that seem to defy gravity. Others have been hollowed into arches and caves, where the sound of waves creates deep resonances. At low tide, the exposed bedrock shows the original layers clearly. Light sandstone alternating with dark mudstone in stripes that run vertically instead of horizontally. These patterns tell stories of alternating conditions on that ancient seafloor. Calm periods when mud settled, storm periods when sand was deposited. Each stripe represents thousands of years, and there are hundreds of stripes, a barcode of deep time written in stone. The Coquille River Lighthouse sits on an island that was connected to the mainland by a sand spit until the 1940s, when a series of winter storms finally severed the natural bridge. This transformation from peninsula to island happened within living memory, a reminder that coastlines are temporary arrangements between land and sea. The lighthouse, built in 1896, now requires a boat to reach except during extreme low tides, when remnants of the old connection are briefly exposed. The island's isolation has created an unexpected sanctuary for nesting seabirds who appreciate the protection from terrestrial predators. The lighthouse itself has been dark since 1939, replaced by an automated beacon on the North Jetty, but it stands as a monument to the era when lighthouse keepers lived in profound isolation. The Coquille River bar it once guarded shifts constantly. Navigation charts from different decades show the channel in completely different positions. Ships that successfully cross the bar one year might run aground the next, following the same course. The lighthouse watched this constant rearrangement for 43 years, its keepers, recording in logs the bar's moods and movements, creating a detailed record of how a river mouth lives and breathes. Cape Perpetua rises 800 feet directly from the ocean, the highest coastal viewpoint accessible by car on the west coast. From its summit on clear days, you can see 40 miles of coastline in each direction. though such days are rare in this realm of perpetual mist. The Cape was named by Captain James Cook in 1778 on St. Perpetua's Day, though the Siuslaw people who lived here called it the whale's backbone for its resemblance to a surfacing gray whale. The Cape exists because of a massive block of volcanic basalt that resists erosion better than surrounding rocks. This basalt erupted underwater 50 million years ago, part of a chain of seamounts that were pushed against the continent. The forest growing on the Cape's slopes experiences winds that regularly exceed 100 miles per hour, creating a wind-sculpted forest where trees grow in fantastic shapes. Some Douglas firs here have grown for centuries without ever standing straight, their trunks corkscrewed by constant wind. The Siuslaw River winds can be heard here, moaning through the twisted trees with harmonics that change with wind speed and direction, creating nature's own organ pipes. The Siuslaw River Bar in Florence, Oregon, shifts position by up to 1,000 feet seasonally as winter storms and summer swells rearrange millions of tons of sand. This constant movement makes the bar one of the most dangerous on the Pacific coast, its channel changing not just yearly, but sometimes daily during storm seasons. The river meets the ocean at a particularly dynamic point where strong longshore currents interact with river flow and tidal exchanges. Sand moves south in winter, north in summer, creating a navigational puzzle that changes with the seasons. The jetties built to stabilize the entrance have only partially succeeded. Sand still accumulates and erodes in patterns that defy prediction. Local fishing boat captains develop an intimate knowledge of the bar's moods, reading subtle clues in wave patterns and watercolor. They know that what looks like a safe channel at high tide might be a sandbar at low, that yesterday's deep water might be today's breaking waves. The Coast Guard station here conducts regular training in the bar's turbulent waters, one of the few places dangerous enough to properly prepare crews for rescue operations. Ecola State Park preserves the exact view William Clark described in 1806 as the grandest and most pleasing prospects which my eyes ever surveyed, a coastline that has changed remarkably little since Lewis and Clark's expedition. From the park's viewpoints, you can see exactly what Clark saw: Haystack Rock to the south, Tillamook Rock Lighthouse to the north, and between them miles of beaches and headlands that remain largely undeveloped. The park's name comes from the Chinook word ecoli, meaning whale, referring to a stranded whale that fed Clark's party. The forest here grows right to the cliff edges, Sitka spruces leaning over the void, their roots gripping fractured basalt. In winter, streams cascade directly off these cliffs, creating ephemeral waterfalls that exist only during rains. The park preserves not just a view, but a moment in American history when the continent still held blank spaces on maps. Standing where Clark stood, seeing essentially what he saw, collapses 2 centuries into nothing. The ocean still pounds the same rocks, eagles still nest in the same snags, and the view still deserves his superlatives. Astoria, Oregon, built largely on pilings over the Columbia River, sits atop 40 feet of sawdust from 19th century sawmills, creating an archaeological layer that preserves a snapshot of frontier industry. This artificial ground is composed of compressed wood waste so thick that it has created its own geological stratum. Buildings in old Astoria occasionally sink as this sawdust slowly decomposes, requiring periodic adjustment. Excavations reveal perfectly preserved wood shavings, some still showing the marks of specific saws. The sawdust layer extends under much of downtown, a human-made geological formation that future archaeologists will puzzle over. The city's position at the Columbia's mouth made it the first permanent American settlement west of the Rockies. From here, You can watch the river's fresh water spreading over denser ocean water, creating a visible layer that extends miles out to sea. The original waterfront is now several blocks inland, filled to create more buildable land. Old-timers tell stories of rowing between buildings during high tides before the fill, when Astoria was more Venice than village. The city exists in 3 dimensions of fill: sawdust below, river sediment in the middle, modern fill on top. Willapa Bay in Washington encompasses the second-largest estuary on the Pacific coast, where 260 square miles of tidelands are exposed at low tide, creating temporary continents that exist for just hours. This massive bay is incredibly shallow, averaging only 6 feet deep at high tide, essentially a thin sheet of water spread over an area larger than Chicago. When the tide withdraws, it reveals a landscape that seems almost Martian, endless mudflats crossed by dendritic channels that branch like neural networks. These exposed tidelands support millions of migrating shorebirds who time their journeys to arrive when the buffet is served twice daily. The bay produces more oysters per acre than anywhere else in America, the shellfish growing fat on nutrients delivered by 5 rivers. The Willapa River, the largest tributary, has changed course multiple times in recorded history, its mouth migrating miles north and south along the bay. Native Chinook peoples had different names for the bay depending on the tide. It was essentially 2 different places, one terrestrial, one marine. During minus tides, you can walk for miles across the exposed bay bottom, though getting lost is easy when water returns, transforming familiar landscapes into seascape. Long Beach Peninsula in Washington grows northward at 150 feet per year, built from sand delivered by the Columbia River and sculpted by prevailing winds into the continent's longest continuous beach. This 28-mile strand is young in geological terms, formed entirely in the last few thousand years as the Columbia's massive sediment load found a place to accumulate. The peninsula acts as a barrier protecting Willapa Bay, though it too is temporary. Storms occasionally cut new inlets that later heal. The beach is so flat and hard that it was used as a highway before roads were built, with stagecoaches racing along the sand at low tide. Early automobiles set speed records here, reaching velocities impossible on the rough roads of the era. The peninsula captures wind-blown sand in massive dune fields that migrate inland, burying forests that later emerge as ghost forests when dunes move on. Archaeological excavations have found multiple layers of human habitation buried at different depths, each representing a period when the peninsula's surface was stable enough for settlement before being buried by advancing sand. Mount Olympus, though just 35 miles from the Pacific coast, receives 200 inches of snow annually, feeding 7 glaciers that are the lowest elevation glaciers in the contiguous United States. The mountain creates its own weather by forcing moisture-laden Pacific air upward, wringing out precipitation that would otherwise travel inland. The glaciers exist not because it's particularly cold. Winter temperatures are relatively mild, but because so much snow falls that summer can't melt at all. These glaciers are remnants of the Ice Age, though much smaller than their former extent. They've carved dramatic valleys that channel weather patterns, creating rainforests in the valleys, while alpine conditions persist on the peaks. The mountain is still growing, pushed upward by the subducting Juan de Fuca plate at about 1 millimeter per year. This might seem negligible, but it means the mountain is 30 feet taller than when the first humans arrived in the region. The Blue Glacier, the largest on the mountain, flows at about 3 inches per day, audibly creaking and groaning as it moves. From the summit on clear days, you can see the Pacific Ocean, a view that encompasses the entire journey of moisture from sea to snow. The Elwha River restoration, represents the largest dam removal project in history, freeing a river that had been blocked for a century and allowing salmon to return to 70 miles of habitat. 2 massive dams were removed between 2011 and 2014, releasing 24 million cubic yards of trapped sediment that had been accumulating since 1913. This sediment, suddenly freed, transformed the river and its delta in ways that surprised even scientists who had planned the restoration. The river mouth, starved of sediment for a century, began growing immediately, adding over 90 acres of new beach and delta. Salmon began returning to upstream areas before the dams were even fully removed, somehow knowing their ancestral waters were becoming accessible again. Trees along the former reservoirs, stressed by a century of fluctuating water levels, suddenly began growing faster. The soundscape changed too. The constant hum of hydroelectric generators replaced by the variable music of a free-flowing river. Within 5 years, all 5 species of Pacific salmon had returned to the upper watershed, their bodies again delivering marine nutrients to forests that had been cut off from the ocean's bounty for generations. Shirley Beach features Point of the Arches, where dozens of sea stacks create a half-mile-long gallery of natural sculptures carved by 10,000 years of waves. These sea stacks are remnants of a former headland, now isolated as islands that form a dotted line extending into the Pacific. Each stack is unique. Some have multiple arches, others are topped with wind-sculpted trees. Still others are bare rock pinnacles that pierce the sky like monuments. The formation represents a moment in the endless process of coastal erosion, temporary on geological scales, but seemingly permanent to human perception. At low tide, tide pools between the stacks reveal miniature ecosystems, each pool a different world, with its own communities of creatures. The Maka people have known this place for thousands of years, their name for it translating to where the water passes through. They understood that these rocks are not barriers, but filters, allowing water to flow while breaking its force. Walking among the sea stacks during a minus tide feels like exploring ruins of a civilization built by geological forces, each arch a doorway to deep time. Whidbey Island stretches 55 miles in length while narrowing to just 1.5 miles at Deception Pass, making it the longest island in the contiguous United States. This extraordinary length-to-width ratio creates an island that feels more like a peninsula that forgot its connection to the mainland. The island formed as glaciers carved Puget Sound, leaving this narrow highland between 2 valleys that became water-filled passages. Its shape creates multiple climates. The western shore, exposed to Pacific storms, receives twice the rainfall of the eastern shore just a few miles away. The island is slowly being pulled apart by erosion at its narrow points, and geologists predict it will eventually become multiple islands. Deception Pass, where tidal currents race through the narrow gap, is gradually widening, cutting deeper into the island with each tide. The island's length means that residents at the north end are closer to Canada than to neighbors at the south end. This geography has created distinct communities along the island's length, each with its own character, shaped by their position along this improbable strip of land. From above, Whidbey looks like a geographic afterthought, a line drawn by an unsteady hand between the Olympic Peninsula and the mainland. The Tacoma Narrows in Puget Sound funnels 41% of the Sound's total water volume through a channel just half a mile wide, creating currents that reach 8.5 knots. This hydraulic bottleneck makes the Narrows one of the most challenging passages for mariners in Puget Sound. The famous bridge that collapsed in 1940 fell victim not just to wind, but to the Narrows' peculiar geography, which funnels and accelerates both air and water. The current bridge, built to replace Galloping Gertie, sways visibly in strong winds but within safe parameters. Below the bridge, the water behaves like a river within the sea, its flow reversing with the tides. During maximum current, whirlpools form that can pull small boats off course. The Narrows represents the southern entrance to the main basin of Puget Sound, a gateway that all water must pass through. The channel is so efficient at moving water that the tide at the south end of the sound occurs nearly an hour later than at the north end, despite the relatively short distance. This creates complex tidal patterns where water can be flowing in opposite directions on either side of islands, making navigation a three-dimensional puzzle of timing and position. Vashon Island in Puget Sound has no natural lakes despite receiving 37 inches of rain annually, a hydrological mystery where water vanishes into glacial, till as if the island were a massive sponge. Every drop of rain that falls here percolates through layers of sand and gravel left by retreating glaciers, emerging later as springs along the shoreline. The island's residents rely entirely on wells that tap into this underground flow, drawing water that fell as rain months or years earlier. This absence of surface water has created a unique ecology where plants and animals adapted to landscapes usually dotted with ponds and streams must instead depend on morning dew and seasonal seeps. The glacial till is so porous that even during the wettest winters, puddles rarely last more than hours. Geologists drilling wells have found multiple layers of different materials: clay, sand, gravel, each telling a story of different phases of glaciation. Some wells pierce through these layers to find ancient seawater trapped when the island was below sea level, water so old it predates human civilization. The island's strange hydrology means that pollution entering the ground at the island's center might not emerge at the shore for decades, making every action on the land a message to the future. The Chehalis River is the only major Washington river that doesn't originate in the mountains, beginning instead in the lowlands of the Willapa Hills and cutting through the Coast Range to reach the Pacific at Gray's Harbor. This reversed geography exists because the river is older than the mountains it crosses, maintaining its course while the Coast Range rose around it. The river begins in prairie wetlands, gathering water from springs and seeps rather than snowmelt, giving it a different character than the glacier-fed rivers of the Cascades and Olympics. During the Ice Age, when Puget Sound was blocked by glaciers, the Chehalis provided the only outlet to the ocean for the entire region's drainage, carrying meltwater from glaciers that stood where Seattle now sits. This history is written in the river's valley, oversized for its current flow, carved by floods of unimaginable magnitude. The river's lowland origin means it warms quickly in summer, creating challenging conditions for salmon that prefer cold water. Yet, salmon persist here, having adapted over millennia to this anomalous river that flows backward through mountains, carrying prairie water to the sea. The Chehalis people who gave the river its name understood its uniqueness, calling it shifting sands for its tendency to constantly rearrange its channel. Cape Flattery, the northwesternmost point of the contiguous United States, experiences 200 days of fog annually and waves that have traveled 6,000 miles across the Pacific without interruption. Standing at the Cape's edge, you are farther west and north than anywhere else in the lower 48 states, a geographical extremity where the continent surrenders to the ocean. The Cape's exposure to unobstructed ocean swells creates waves of extraordinary power. During winter storms, they explode against cliffs with force that registers on seismographs. Tatoosh Island, just offshore, hosts a weather station that has recorded winds exceeding 150 miles per hour. The fog here isn't gentle mist, but a living wall of white that moves with purpose, engulfing the cape in minutes and lingering for days. Trees grow horizontally, shaped by ceaseless wind into living compasses that all point east. The Maka people have lived at this extremity for thousands of years, their village of Nia Bay sheltered just south of the Cape. They developed specialized canoes capable of handling the massive swells, hunting whales in waters that terrify modern mariners. From the Cape on clear days, you can see Vancouver Island. But such days are rare in this realm, where fog is the norm and clarity the exception. Bellingham Bay was carved by the Cordilleran ice sheet, which extended south from Canada like a frozen bulldozer 2 miles thick, gouging channels that now form the San Juan Island's intricate waterways. The ice sheet's weight was so immense it depressed the Earth's crust by hundreds of feet, and the land is still rising from that burden, lifting ancient beaches above current sea level. The bay's depth and shape were determined by the hardness of underlying bedrock. Where the rock was soft, the ice carved deep channels. Where it was hard, islands remained. Lummi Island, sitting in the bay, is a piece of harder rock that resisted the glacier's grinding, standing now as a monument to geological stubbornness. The glacier left other signatures, scratches on exposed bedrock all pointing the same direction. Massive boulders called erratics dropped randomly as the ice melted. One erratic near the bay weighs 600 tons and came from mountains in British Columbia, carried here like a pebble in the glacier's grip. The bay continues to evolve as rivers deposit sediment, slowly filling what the ice carved, a process that will eventually turn bay back into land. The Fraser River in British Columbia delivers 20 million tons of sediment annually to the Strait of Georgia, building its delta seaward at 10 feet per year. This river, draining a quarter of British Columbia, carries the eroded substance of mountains, depositing them grain by grain to create new land. The delta has grown 7 miles into the strait since Captain Vancouver mapped it in 1792, adding thousands of acres that didn't exist when America was founded. During spring freshet, when mountain snow melts, the river turns brown with suspended sediment, its plume visible from space as it spreads into the strait. This sediment doesn't just build land, it feeds the entire marine ecosystem, providing nutrients that support everything from microscopic plankton to killer whales. The weight of accumulating sediment causes the delta to slowly sink, a process called subsidence, requiring constant addition of new material just to maintain elevation. Ancient channels of the Fraser are preserved in the delta's subsurface, showing the river has shifted position dozens of times, each shift leaving a buried signature. Richmond and Delta, cities built on this sediment, exist on land that is essentially temporary, maintained only by the river's constant delivery of mountain fragments. Boundary Bay between Washington and British Columbia is less than 18 feet deep across its entire 16 square mile expanse, creating the largest intertidal mudflat on the west coast. This shallow depression acts like a vast dinner plate, alternately filled and emptied by tides that expose miles of mud rich with invertebrates. The bay supports millions of migrating birds on the Pacific Flyway, who time their journeys to arrive when the tide is out and the feeding is optimal. The mudflats might appear lifeless, but each square meter contains thousands of organisms, worms, clams, amphipods, that filter millions of gallons of water with each tide. The international border runs invisibly through the middle of the bay, creating the unusual situation where birds feeding on mudflats constantly cross between nations. The bay's shallowness means that temperature varies dramatically, freezing in winter low tides, warming to bathtub temperatures in summer sun. This extreme environment has created specialized organisms found nowhere else, adapted to conditions that would kill most marine life. Walking on the mudflats at low tide feels like traversing an alien landscape, the mud making sounds underfoot as trapped air escapes, while millions of tiny holes mark where creatures retreated as the water left. Protection Island near Port Townsend hosts 70% of the breeding seabird population in Puget Sound on just 364 acres, making it one of the most densely populated bird colonies on the Pacific coast. 17,000 pairs of rhinoceros auklets nest here in burrows they dig into the soft soil, transforming the island into a honeycomb of tunnels. During breeding season, the evening sky fills with returning parents, each carrying fish crosswise in their beaks, creating an aerial highway of birds converging on the island. The colony's density means every square foot of suitable habitat is occupied, with birds sometimes fighting over premium nesting sites. The island was nearly destroyed in the early 1900s when farmers introduced rabbits, which competed for burrow space, but the rabbits were eventually eliminated, allowing the birds to recover. The guano from all these birds has created soil so rich in nitrogen that plants grow unnaturally large, creating a jungle-like vegetation unusual for this latitude. The island's protection status means humans rarely visit, allowing glimpses of what Puget Sound's islands were like before human settlement. At night, during breeding season, the island resonates with thousands of calls, creating a sound that carries for miles across calm water. The Dungeness spit in Washington grows eastward at 15 feet per year, now stretching 5.5 miles into the Strait of Juan de Fuca, the longest natural sand spit in the United States. This narrow finger of sand and gravel has been growing for 5,000 years, fed by sediment eroded from nearby bluffs and shaped by currents into an almost perfect arc. The spit creates a sheltered bay behind it where conditions are completely different from the exposed strait. Calm where outside is rough, warm where outside is cold. Walking the spit's length takes hours, following a path barely wider than a sidewalk in places, with waves breaking on both sides during storms. The lighthouse at the spit's end, built in 1857, has had to be moved several times as the spit grew past it. The spit's shape changes seasonally, growing in summer when waves come from the northwest, eroding in winter when storms attack from the southwest. This constant reshaping means maps of the spit are outdated within years. During extreme high tides combined with storm waves, the spit can be breached, temporarily becoming a series of islands before sand movement repairs the breaks. Port Angeles Harbor sits in the rain shadow of the Olympics, receiving only 25 inches of rain annually, while locations 50 miles west receive 140 inches. This dramatic difference occurs because the Olympic Mountains force Pacific storms upward, wringing out moisture on their western slopes, leaving dry air to descend on Port Angeles. The city exists in an almost Mediterranean climate pocket, surrounded by rainforest, but experiencing sunshine when nearby areas are deluged. This rain shadow extends across the Strait of Juan de Fuca to Victoria, creating a dry corridor in one of the world's wettest regions. The harbor itself is protected by Eddy's Hook, a natural sand spit similar to Dungeness spit, but curving in the opposite direction. The harbor's unusual clarity results from limited river input. No major streams deliver sediment here, keeping waters transparent. On calm days, the harbor becomes a mirror, reflecting the Olympics so perfectly that photographs appear upside down until you notice boats floating in the sky. The Klallam people chose this location for their main village precisely because of its favorable climate, calling it the Good Place, long before European charts named it. The lost coast of Alaska stretches 500 miles from Yakutat to Cordova with no roads, where glaciers meet the ocean at 20 different points. This is wilderness on a scale that defies comprehension, a coastline longer than California's that can only be reached by boat or plane. The mountains here rise directly from the sea to heights exceeding 15,000 feet, creating the greatest vertical relief on Earth. Glaciers flow from these peaks directly into the ocean, calving icebergs into waters that have never known human development. The coast is still rising from glacial rebound, lifting at rates exceeding 1 inch per year in places, making this one of the most rapidly changing coastlines on Earth. Storms here are legendary. Pacific typhoons that have transformed into extratropical cyclones arrive with hurricane-force winds and 50-foot seas. The few people who have walked portions of this coast report landscapes that seem almost fictional. Ice caves opening onto black sand beaches, waterfalls that flow upward in fierce winds, forests growing on top of glaciers. The coast's remoteness has preserved ecosystems unchanged since the Pleistocene, where bears have never learned to fear humans, and glaciers still behave as they did during the Ice Age. Prince William Sound in Alaska contains 3,000 miles of shoreline compressed into an area the size of Switzerland, a geographical maze of fjords, islands, and passages that create one of the most complex coastlines on Earth. If the Sound's shoreline were stretched straight, it would reach from Alaska to Mexico. This complexity results from glacial carving during ice ages, when the Sound was buried under miles of ice. The ice carved deep fjords that now reach far inland, some extending 60 miles from the open ocean. The Sound contains over 150 glaciers, many still reaching tidewater, constantly reshaping the coastline through calving and sediment deposition. The 1964 earthquake dramatically altered the Sound's geography, lifting some areas 30 feet while dropping others below sea level. Entire forests were drowned when land subsided, their salt-killed trunks still standing as ghost forests. The Sound's protected waters create a marine highway for everything from sea otters to oil tankers, though the Exxon Valdez disaster proved how vulnerable this enclosed ecosystem can be. Recovery from that spill continues decades later, with oil still found beneath some beaches. Hubbard Glacier advances at 80 feet per year, occasionally damming Russell Fjord and creating a temporary lake that rises 60 feet before catastrophically draining. This advance is unusual. Most glaciers worldwide are retreating, but Hubbard is growing, fed by massive snowfall in the St. Elias Mountains. When the glacier seals Russell Fjord, it traps marine animals on the wrong side of the ice dam, creating an ecological crisis as saltwater becomes fresh. The lake rises until water pressure exceeds the ice dam's strength, then bursts in floods that dwarf any river's flow. These outburst floods carry icebergs the size of houses miles downstream, scouring channels and rearranging the landscape. The glacier's face stands 400 feet above water and extends another 400 feet below, a wall of ice 3/4 of a mile wide. When it calves, apartment building-sized pieces crash into the sea, creating waves that can capsize boats a mile away. The glacier has advanced and retreated repeatedly over centuries, each advance and retreat leaving geological evidence. Native Tlingit oral histories describe the glacier's movements over generations, stories that align remarkably with geological evidence. The Copper River Delta spans 700,000 acres of wetlands, where 250 million migrating shorebirds stop each spring, representing 5 million birds per day during peak migration. This vast wetland exists because the Copper River carries enormous sediment loads from glaciers grinding away the Chugach Mountains, depositing this material in a delta that grows constantly seaward. The delta's importance to Pacific flyway birds cannot be overstated. Some species depend entirely on this single stopover to fuel their journeys to Arctic breeding grounds. During spring migration, the biomass of birds on the delta exceeds that of any other vertebrate gathering in North America. The 1964 earthquake lifted parts of the delta 6 feet, converting saltwater marshes to freshwater systems overnight and forcing wholesale ecosystem reorganization. The delta's channels shift constantly as the river finds new paths to the sea, creating a landscape that looks different with each decade. Commercial fishermen have harvested salmon here for over a century, timing their nets to intercept runs that pulse through the delta's channels. The sound of millions of birds during peak migration creates a constant din, audible miles inland, a sound that has continued uninterrupted for thousands of springs. Montague Island in Prince William Sound rose 33 feet during the 1964 Alaska earthquake, the greatest vertical displacement ever measured from an earthquake. This uplift happened in less than 5 minutes, lifting marine terraces above sea level and stranding sea life high and dry. Barnacle lines on rocks now 30 feet above highest tides mark the former sea level, a bathtub ring that circles the entire island. The earthquake also caused horizontal movement. The island shifted 64 feet to the southeast, distances that seem impossible for solid ground to move. The uplift exposed previously submarine sediments containing fossils of multiple earlier earthquakes, showing this vertical violence repeats roughly every 600 years. Trees that were at sea level before the earthquake now grow far above the reach of the highest tides, their roots still shaped by salt exposure they no longer experience. New beaches formed instantly from what had been seafloor, covered with confused marine organisms trying to crawl back to water that was suddenly unreachable. The island continues to adjust to its new elevation. Streams are cutting new channels, vegetation zones are shifting, and the ecosystem is still reorganizing decades later. Misty Fjords National Monument contains granite cliffs that rise 3,000 feet straight from the ocean, carved by glaciers that were 2 miles thick. These walls are so steep that waterfalls free fall hundreds of feet before touching rock again, creating veils of mist that give the monument its name. The granite here is 50 to 70 million years old, formed deep underground when the Pacific Northwest was a volcanic arc like today's Indonesia. The fjords reach over 100 miles inland, some so narrow that large boats must carefully navigate between walls that seem to touch overhead. In places, the water is over 1,000 feet deep, just yards from shore, depths that equal the surrounding mountains' heights. The area receives over 150 inches of rain annually, creating thousands of waterfalls that appear and disappear with each storm. Some fjords have never been fully explored, their upper reaches accessible only to those willing to navigate increasingly narrow passages that might dead end or might open into hidden valleys. The monument's remoteness means it remains much as it was when glaciers retreated, a vertical wilderness where mountains meet sea in ways that challenge comprehension. The Sticken River creates the largest delta on the southeast Alaska coast, where fresh water spreads 5 miles into the ocean, floating on denser salt water and freezing on top, while marine water flows beneath. This creates the unusual situation of ice skating over liquid ocean. The fresh water caps solid, while tides move salt water below. The river delivers so much silt that its plume is visible from space, a brown fan spreading into the blue ocean. The delta supports the largest spring gathering of bald eagles in southeast Alaska, over 1,500 birds congregating to feed on Yulikan runs. These small fish, so oily they can be dried and burned like candles, arrive in billions, turning the river black with their bodies. The river's name means Great River in Tlingit, and it has been a trade highway for thousands of years, one of the few corridors through the coast mountains. John Muir called the Steichen a Yosemite that goes on for 100 miles, referring to the granite walls and glaciers along its course. The delta grows by several acres each year, built from mountains being ground to dust hundreds of miles inland. Lituya Bay witnessed the tallest wave in recorded history at 1,720 feet in 1958, when an earthquake-triggered landslide displaced 40 million cubic yards of rock into the water. This wave, taller than the Empire State Building, stripped trees from mountainsides half a mile above sea level, leaving a trim line still visible today. The bay's T-shape and steep walls created perfect conditions for this mega tsunami. The landslide at the head of the bay displaced water that had nowhere to go but up. Fishing boats in the bay rode the wave and survived, their crews describing water flowing uphill over mountain spurs. The bay has generated similar waves repeatedly. Research shows at least 4 other megatsunamis in the past 2 centuries. The bay's danger comes from its setting at the intersection of the Fairweather Fault and steep, unstable mountains constantly undercut by glaciers. Despite its history, the bay remains important for fishing, its protected waters offering shelter from the open Pacific. Native Tlingit oral histories tell of multiple giant waves over generations, stories initially dismissed by scientists, but now confirmed by geological evidence. The bay's beauty belies its violence. On calm days, it appears peaceful, giving no hint of its capacity for catastrophe. The Fairweather Fault off southeast Alaska moves at 2 inches per year, the fastest moving strike-slip fault in North America, grinding the Pacific Plate past the North American Plate with inevitable violence. This movement has created the spectacular mountains of the St. Elias Range, pushing them up faster than erosion can wear them down. The fault runs underwater just offshore, occasionally breaking in massive earthquakes that reshape the coastline. The 1958 earthquake that triggered the Lituya Bay megatsunami was a fair-weather event, just one of many this fault has produced. The fault's rapid movement means the landscape changes measurably within human lifetimes. Surveys show points on opposite sides of the fault separating by feet per decade. This movement creates constant small earthquakes, thousands per year, most too small to feel but collectively relieving stress that would otherwise build to catastrophic levels. The fault extends from the Queen Charlotte Islands to the Aleutians, a 1,000-mile-long crack in the earth that defines the boundary between 2 different worlds. Ships crossing the fault pass from one tectonic plate to another, though nothing marks this profound boundary but a line on geological maps. Point Hope, Alaska, has been continuously inhabited for 2,500 years, making it one of the oldest settlements in North America, where ancient beaches now sit 30 feet above modern sea level. The point extends into the Chukchi Sea like a finger pointing toward Siberia, just 160 miles away. This location has always been strategic. Whales migrating through the narrow passage between Alaska and Russia pass close to shore here. The Inupiat name Tikigak means index finger, recognizing the point's shape and its role in pointing toward resources. Archaeological excavations have revealed layer upon layer of habitation, each era's tools and bones telling stories of adaptation to changing climates. The frozen ground has preserved organic materials normally lost to time. Wooden tools, leather clothing, even food remains that reveal ancient diets. The point is slowly eroding, each storm claiming more land and exposing new archaeological treasures before destroying them. Climate change has accelerated this erosion as permafrost thaws and sea ice, which once protected the shore from waves, disappears earlier and forms later each year. Yet people remain, as they have for millennia, adapting to changes that would drive others away, their presence a testament to human persistence at the edge of the world. We've traveled tonight along thousands of miles of coastline, from purple sands to towering glaciers, from the smallest harbors to the deepest submarine canyons. The West Coast reveals itself as a boundary in constant motion, not just where land meets sea, but where geological time meets human time, where tectonic plates slide past each other at the speed of growing fingernails, while waves reshape beaches with every tide. In these facts, we find the quiet truth that nothing on our coast is permanent, yet everything endures. The same forces that built these landscapes continue their work tonight as you rest. Waves polishing glass on forgotten beaches, glaciers calving into midnight waters, sand moving grain by grain to build tomorrow's shores. Rivers still carry mountains to the sea, one particle at a time. Tides still breathe in and out, following rhythms older than life itself. Perhaps that's the deepest geography lesson of all, that even the solidest ground beneath us is simply taking its time to change. And in that slow transformation, there is a peculiar peace. The West Coast doesn't resist the ocean. It converses with it in a language older than words, written in stone and sand, in fog and fallen trees, in the patient accumulation of sediment and the sudden violence of earthquakes. Tomorrow, the coast will be different than it was today, imperceptibly, but inevitably changed. Somewhere, a cliff will have retreated another fraction of an inch. A river will have moved a few more grains of mountain toward the sea. A glacier will have advanced or retreated by the width of a hand. These changes, too small to notice but too numerous to stop, remind us that the earth is not a stage for our stories, but a story itself, still being written. Sweet dreams, and thank you for joining me tonight in exploring these gentle mysteries of our western edge. May your sleep be as deep as Monterey Canyon, as peaceful as the Hoh rainforest, and may you wake refreshed like a beach renewed by the tide. Until we meet again beneath the stars, this is Midnight Geography, signing off.